bit different because I'm here to talk about my book, Patriot Not Politician, Win or Go Homeless. And I think there's some lessons in my book that we might be able to learn from for California, because in a lot of ways, almost everyone I know and almost every group I've spoken to recently is a third of the size that it was, and so many people are leaving the state, or they've gotten burned out from doing all the work themselves, or they've just given up. They just don't believe there's any hope for California. I gotta tell you, driving up and down the 5 freeway and the 99, there was a 10-mile stretch, it was in Madera County, where California's freeways are as good as South Carolina. And that's it. The rest of the place, they're third world. The rest of the state, our roads are falling apart. My wife and I were driving, it was late one night, she's always having to work, she's working 2 jobs right now, I'm working 2 jobs, we're trying to do, like a lot of people, keep everything moving. So she was sleeping so that the next morning she wouldn't be completely exhausted. I have no idea that was a cell phone. We hit a 2-foot divot in the highway that just sunk, disappeared, and then bounced back up. It was on one of those little under crossings where they have water going underneath the freeway. And I'm thinking, this is California? I mean, I came here in 1985 in a VW Bug. I came to a place that was gorgeous, to a place that was growing, to an economy that was booming, to a place where one time the standard bearer of the Republican Liberty Movement, who's on your beautiful sign that Scott showed me on the way in, was governor. This place, you know what the biggest problem was when Ronald Reagan was governor? They had a serious immigration problem. There were too many people coming to California. And they didn't have enough housing. They had lots of jobs. So they wound up building the housing. And they wound up building the infrastructure. And even Jerry Brown's dad had some vision and understood that we needed infrastructure. And yet, when you look at where we are today, when you look at this great state that is in such a sad state of affairs under the totalitarian regime of Marxist progressives who believe the government should control everything you do, who believe the government should steal every penny you have. It's really important for us to figure out a plan of action, what we're going to do about it. And so, a lot of what I have written in my book is instructive to that end, because we all watched as President Trump became the 45th President of the United States, right? We've all celebrated that. And we enjoy that. I saw this coffee cup that I want to get that says, every day I wake up and thank God that Trump is still president. And I want to get that just because it makes the left go crazy. Because they just hate him so much. And they don't hate him because he's an evil person. They don't hate him because he's Republican. That really has lost almost all meaning. They hate him because he's a threat to their power and their control. Yep. And see, I was the threat in 2014 in the gubernatorial race, which many of you helped me with. And no, we didn't have the same result, but we certainly made the same enemies. It was the whole establishment cabal of Mitt Romney, Jeb Bush, and even Pete Wilson here in California, and Condi Rice, and all these others who raised money and signed their name to a mail piece, a hit piece on me, that was 98% lies according to some newspaper articles. But here's the thing. Right now, we actually have an opportunity to take the governorship if we had the right candidate, and if we had the right, someone who understood what it's about, someone who understood the opportunity, somebody who understood what could be done with an opportunity like this. We have the Democrats in a civil war. They're at the beginning of their civil war, by the way. You've got the Bernie-crats versus the establishment. And maybe, hopefully, we're at the end of ours. I mean, certainly, President Trump steamrolled over the GOP establishment, and that was a critical and crucial part of his victory. He needed to win that one for us. And those of you, how many of you in here are Reagan fans? Okay? How many of you in here know that one of the very first battles that Ronald Reagan faced to become governor in 1966 was in the back rooms of the Republican Party? The moderates and the liberals and the leftists within the Republican Party were his biggest enemy. He took them on. He shut them down. He beat them. He out-argued them. He won people to his side. And they attacked him relentlessly. And they trashed him. You know what they called him? They called him a racist. That sounds familiar. But I digress a little bit from my book, in part because I've been giving the same speech over and over again. All of it's almost like running for governor. It's like deja vu going on here. But I published my book on December 18th of 2016, in large part due to my beautiful wife, Rowena, who's here with me today. And, you know, she says, you just got to push the button. By the way, I pushed the button in LA County. I hope they don't charge me extra for that. We were at Parker's Lighthouse enjoying some clam chowder and a beer in the beautiful sunshine, because we, you know, where we live, it was snowing. And anyway, I knew the book wasn't perfect. I knew there were still a few typos in it, but she said, you've got to get this out in time for Christmas so that patriots can give each other a gift. So I sent it out to my email list, which is something like 80,000 names. And lo and behold, I get a phone call a couple of hours later from a reporter. And he used to work for the LA Times. Now he's at the SAC-B, and he says, Assemblyman, could I get a copy of your book? I said, sure. You know, just thinking, there's no bad press, right? I mean, if we learned anything in the Trump era. So I sent him the book. 2 hours later, he calls me back, and he says, Assemblyman, I suppose he just sped read the book, I don't know, but he says, Assemblyman, I'm very concerned about you and your political future. Anytime the LA Times or the Sacramento Bee, or any reporter really, is concerned about your political future, you need to be wary. And I just said, why, Chris, I didn't know you cared. And then he says, I don't know if you know this, and this is totally off the record, but your book is very open, and you may have just jeopardized your political future. And I said, dude, first of all, I know what's in the book, I wrote it. And second of all, it's not a political book. It's certainly not a campaign book. If you haven't noticed, I'm not running for anything. So, but I do want you to know something, and I want you to put this on the record. The reason I wrote this book was to be obedient to God and give testimony to the miracles that He has done in our lives, including putting a call on my life, including getting me elected the first time to the Assembly. Mm-hmm. And miracle of miracles, he quoted me verbatim, put that in the story along with a very misleading headline, but you know, it is the Sacramento Bee. And he said, so the headline that went all over the state was, mulling another run for governor, Donnelly writes tell-all book. And I'm thinking, run for governor? I didn't say anything about that. But, you know, that's how they get their headlines. They always use a little hook. And it's astonishing, the things that he thought were shocking in my book. And so he put on the front page the story about someone you may know, Charles Munger Jr., who bought the Republican Party for $3 million when they were in debt. And it was about 4 days after I lost the governor's race. I'm back in Sacramento. I'm a lame duck, and let me just tell you, how many people here have run for office and lost? Ouch. Thank you for your service, first of all. But doesn't it suck to lose? You put all that time, you put all that effort, and then when you're not victorious, it's just hard. Now, try losing on a level one step down from the presidency, and that's the governorship of California, when they have 9 news vans outside your election night party. I wanted to call it a victory party. I guess it's a good thing I didn't, because I lost a race everybody expected me to win. And I lost to the establishment. I lost to the very people, as I have already said, who came after Trump. And it doesn't make it any less painful. You know, the next day you wake up and instead of, 700 emails in your inbox and, 50 phone calls and maybe 100 texts, it's pretty much zero. You're a nothing. You don't exist anymore. People don't, well, they don't want to be associated when you've lost. It's just human nature. I mean, think about Hillary Clinton. I know we laugh, but she is a human being, I've been told.
I guess.
And,
the jury's still out on that one.
I was trying to get her phone number after the election ended because I wanted to call her up and say, Hillary, I feel your pain. It's no fun. So here I am back in the Capitol. I'm a lame duck, right? Because I have a couple months before I'm turned out, or not turned out, but I'm out of office. I actually gave up my seat when I chose to run for governor. And anybody who's serious will not run for 2 seats. I'm sorry, you can't serve 2 masters. You have to be 100% committed. So I'm standing there, I'm in the quad, and I'm just sort of looking out into space, and along comes Travis Allen. He says, I'd like to buy you a sandwich. I said, great, you can pay for it as long as I don't have to eat with you or anyone else. I just don't want to talk to any people. And he's like, oh, no problem, dude. So I got my sandwich. I'm standing there, well, sort of waiting for them to finish it and call me, and I'm just looking out into space, and all of a sudden I see Charles Munger Jr. And then I see his little minion, Luis, and I see all these Republicans coming up and kissing his ring. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't know what happened. Maybe I had a look on my face. Maybe it was a glare. And then pretty soon they're gesticulating at me and sort of it seems like they're making fun of me or pointing at me. So I feel myself being propelled toward him. And all of a sudden, all the Republicans just vanish like rats off a sinking ship. And I'm thinking, oh, they must think I'm armed or something. And, I guess you guys never heard about the airport. Anyway, so I get there, and Charles extends his hand along with Luis. And, ordinarily you're polite, right? It's the thing to do. But I just looked at him and said, why would I shake your hand when you just spent $500,000 lying about me and my family? And he was a little bit taken aback. He said, well, wait, if I said anything that was untrue, I will absolutely, positively print a retraction in the newspapers. I'm terribly sorry. I said, I'm sorry. Well, I don't think I said I'm sorry. I might have used some words I can't repeat here. But I said, 5 newspapers, including very liberal newspapers like the SAC-B, Mercury News, San Francisco Chronicle, LA Times have all called you a liar. And, damage is done. I said, but now that we're here having this little chat, I just want to know something. I want to understand something, because you bought the Republican Party and you control it with your money. And I just want to know, what is it about Christians and constitutionalists and conservatives that you hate so much? And he said, oh, no, I go to church. I said, dude, I don't want to hear about it. I just want to know why you spend 80 to 90% of all the money you spend. You always find either a liberal Republican or a leftist Republican, or you just leave the Republican Party altogether like you did in the governor's race, and you go find a Democrat to support. What is it about the principles of the Republican Party that you hate so much? And of course, he wouldn't answer it. And he tried to deny it and give me examples. But time after time after time after time, in race after race, and I'm not talking about in his neighborhood, for his representatives. He put millions of dollars behind the guy who became my congressman, who just the other day was one of the 24 who voted to spend military money that's supposed to go for our defense on sex reassignment surgery for people paid for by the taxpayers of the United States. He was one of the 24 Republicans. And, oh, by the way, how many of you like the top two?
Up to what?
The top two primary, the jungle primary. He's the guy who financed that.
No,
Put all the money behind that. He is a guy who wanted to wreck and destroy the Republican Party and put a halt to the conservative movement. Thank God for Donald Trump, who understood these kind of people and understood how to fight them. I wish that I had gone to the Donald J. Trump Graduate School of How to Treat the Media. Because by now I'd have a PhD in it. And I'm telling you, if I ran again, it'd be real fun. If a reporter asked me a question like they asked him, I would just say, hey, that's a really stupid question. Do you have a better one, or shall I move on to someone smarter? See, that's what they did. That's what he did. He took the Alinsky playbook, turned it around with a sense of humor, kind of like what Reagan used to do, and turned it back on them. And basically became the cool guy who is beating them at every turn. And that's the way that we are going to win back the greatest state in the union. But we're not going to be able to do this ourselves. We're going to have to, and I'm not going to give you the playbook that you hear all the time within the Republican establishment. You just need to go out and reach out to blacks and Hispanics and young people. No, that's ridiculous. If you ran a really successful company and you want to sell a product, you don't care who's going to buy the product, right? You just want sales. So if you want sales, what do? You make a great product that people can't live without. There's a whole lot of people out there that don't know what's wrong, but they know that having to pay extra tax when they already pay the highest taxes in the nation just to do the stuff government was supposed to do, it's a no-brainer. When we're handing out freebies to illegal aliens to go to college, and we're telling Californians whose families have paid in for generations, you're out of luck. And you have Californians who are sending their kids out of state just so they can get a spot in college. People get it. They understand there's something very wrong. By the way, 25% of Democrats are on that issue. When I worked to repeal the DREAM Act, and many of you helped me, we were working side by side with very liberal Democrats. But you'll notice something. I'm not talking about politics, and neither was President Trump. He talked about things that matter to people. People care about their pocketbook. They don't mind paying for good roads. They don't mind paying for good schools. We built one of the most amazing university systems in the world. But they don't like paying twice and then getting nothing. They don't like hitting 2-foot divots on the freeway. And it's not just the freeway, it's a lot of the surface streets. It's because the state controls, and so does the federal government, but there's a huge pot of money to do all the things that governments are supposed to do. But when you look around and you say, well, why is it that they haven't done any of the things that government's supposed to do? And the only solution they have every single solitary time is to come back and rob more and more of our money. That's a massive opportunity that we could exploit. Now, the Republican Party is, for the very first time that I have witnessed since my coming to California, since Prop 187, this is the first time I've seen the Republican Party try to do something. They've tried to recall the guy who was one of the deciding votes, State Senator Josh Newman, who's in a seat that they could possibly take out. They've taken some of their money that they don't spend in any of the races by the way. They didn't spend in the 2014 gubernatorial race, even though they worked very hard to keep any money from coming to me. But they have targeted one race, and they've gotten the signatures. The only problem is the Democrats were once again one step ahead, and they took the recall race. And if it had just been a recall race right in the middle of, nothing else going on, when nobody's paying any attention and there's no reason for people to go to the polls, it would have been pretty much a no-brainer to get a Republican in there. They moved it all the way to the general election in 2018. So it'll be held at a regularly scheduled election in which there is zero advantage, except for the fact that if enough people say, let's recall the guy, then he will literally not be on the ballot and he won't have the incumbency advantage that a lot of these guys have. But I don't know, it remains to be seen, because the Republican Party's strategy, at least in 2014, when I ran for governor, was to lose. And that's why the Republican Party has shrunk to the smallest it has been since its existence, which is, the Republican Party is now 25.9% of the registered voters in the state of California.
Wow.
25.9. And it shouldn't surprise you, because in the year of Trump, when ordinary people from across all walks of life, and Arthur can attest to this, he's out there with people that are mostly non-Caucasian and under the age of 30, who are Latinos for Trump. They're the most hardcore people I've ever seen. They're getting in the face of the left. They're actually making an impact and a dent, and some of them are getting some really good coverage. But here's the thing. The Republican Party, the establishment elites, when I say the Republican Party, that's what I'm referring to, not you, turn their back on Trump. They turn their back on Trump in a year when Trump helped people sweep into office across the country, and the people who turned their back on Trump lost. That's what's so amazing. Now, why did they lose? They lost because they weren't in touch with the movement of the day. They weren't in touch with the fact that we had done something that became, non-political probably isn't the right word. We transcended politics for a moment, because it became about the people versus the establishment. Because the established political parties had left their true beliefs and their base, and it was on both the Democrat and the Republican side. And a lot of people felt like they had nowhere to go. And so, but a lot of them were leaning Republican. But when the party said, well, we don't really want to be associated with them, when Assemblymen said, we don't really want to be associated with them, and they were sending out mail pieces, and when people said, oh my God, Trump, I can tell you, walking door to door, in a congressional bid that I made against a sitting Republican who was not really a Republican, people kept asking me. And see, as soon as I knew who I was going to support, I put out an endorsement of President Trump. But I picked my timing on that, right? As I was walking door to door, I really wanted to have everyone's vote. So I wasn't getting up in their faces. I wasn't campaigning for President Trump. I was campaigning for myself. And I was shocked, because I was knocking Republican and Democrat doors. 65-year-old black woman telling me how much she loves Donald Trump. And I'm like, okay, but I want you to vote for Tim Donnelly. She goes, I don't know who you are. I go, well, I'm the one who's here at your door, so give me a little love here. Come on, help me out. But seriously, I said, just tell me, what is it? How did Trump reach you? What is the deal? Because, I mean, in the media, they're calling him a Nazi and a xenophobe, and they're putting Hitler's face on him, and just, they're trying every tactic they have to make you hate him, and it's making people love him. And you know what she said? She said he got balls. Those were her exact words. And she said, the man is trying to take him down. And he is a fighter. And she made a connection that he's going to fight for me. See? Now, you notice how that has zero to do with the vast majority of candidates who are out there running? And unfortunately, we don't really have a champion running for governor at this point. And believe me, I've thought about it, I've considered it, because I understand the nature of the fight. But I've been praying about it and have not been given a clear direction. And one of the things I've asked God for is, hey, $10 million would be really nice. That's kind of a sign that I'm supposed to run. And so far, we checked the bank account and it's still not there. But on a serious note, there's something Reagan-esque about this moment. If we understand, and Trump is not as Reagan-esque as I would like him to be at times, but he understands this moment. And we need to understand that in order to truly win, to truly have a victory, we've got to send somebody who will be a threat to those who have become the greatest threat to our natural God-given rights. The ones that governments were formed to protect: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And see, when you send somebody who's a threat, you know exactly how the establishment and those in power feel about that threat by how they treat them. And if they use the playbook and come after them and call them a racist and call them all kinds of names and demand all kinds of things from them, like tax returns and other things that they don't demand of other candidates. I mean, when you look at how the media is treating Donald Trump versus how they treated Hillary Clinton, right? They're interested in looking into every single solitary aspect of any dealings or conversations he's had with Russia. Meanwhile, she had all kinds of dealings with Russia that could be very clearly identified as conflicts of interest while she was holding a position of power. They don't care about any of that because they are there to defend a narrative. And so this is not a political Republican versus Democrat fight. We are living in times where, in California, we don't know whether the whole political paradigm will collapse, and we will be called to defend our rights the way that the founders had to. I mean, they started this little experiment knowing and understanding that the powers that be were going to come down on them and crush them. When they did the Boston Tea Party, it wasn't a joke and a stunt. It was a big middle finger to those in power, and they came after them. That's what Lexington and Concord was about. It was about disarming them. And so I want to leave you with a simple understanding of what I think we need. We need a two-pronged approach. We need to continue to push for and elect Republicans, but in particular, patriots. We don't need any more politicians. We need patriots who will put everything on the line for the cause. The cause is simple. The cause ain't so that I can have a job for life and a pension and a paycheck and so that I'm good. If I were a politician, I would have stayed in my assembly seat. I never would have taken on the fight of Jerry Brown with his $25 million in the bank. Little did I know that I wasn't going to get past the Republican Party. By the way, did I ever tell you what Karl Rove said when he came to California? He said it's better to lose with Kashkari than win with Donnelly. And see, what I heard was it's better to lose. And see, the Republican GOP establishment, of which political consultants are part, you might know this name, Rob Stutzman, who was the consultant that got us Arnold Schwarzenegger. His comment was, if Donnelly wins, I will raise money for Jerry Brown.
Wow.
So you now have a powerful person within the Republican establishment endorsing all of the policies that Jerry Brown did, including completely eviscerating the Second Amendment, including transgender bathrooms, including all the nonsense and craziness and regulation after regulation after regulation that we've seen come down. They would rather have that than have someone who they couldn't control. And see, so for me, my experience as governor was a prelude to the election of President Trump. But it was also instructive for how we can actually succeed here in California. And as I said, two-pronged approach. So we continue to fight to elect patriots, but there's few candidates that will have the stuff, what they used to call the right stuff. They got to have charisma. They got to have the ability to articulate. They've got to be able to raise money, which is an art. Let me tell you, it's fun. Calling people up and asking them for money and then having that long pause and hoping to God they don't hang up. But there's that, but we also have to understand how we got here. We didn't get here overnight. And it's funny, I write for Breitbart. You know how Breitbart got its start, right? Andrew Breitbart. And he had the simple understanding that politics was downstream from culture. And we're in the middle of a culture war that we have been losing for decades now. Because the institutions of culture are controlled by the left. And the left is becoming more and more extreme, and they don't care about anything. My friend Bob was talking about the leftists on the way over, and he had a funny example. He said, you know, if Democrats murdered somebody on the floor of the House, they would all gather in a circle and say, hey, there's nothing to see here, and pretend it never happened and covered it up and figure out how to get the body out. Whereas if conservatives did that, they'd all be pointing at each other and say, which one of us killed him? And, you know, and immediately scattering, and because there's this idea that you've got to be accountable, and there's this idea that you've got to play by all the rules and have decorum and class. But you need to think about how much it is driving the left insane to have somebody like Trump, who doesn't play by any rules, who night and day is attacking them the way they have attacked us.
Yes.
And I'm not saying we need to do everything Trump's doing. Some people wouldn't be comfortable with that, but I think we need to go out there a little bit. And we certainly need to wage an effective battle to take back these pillars of culture. One way you can do it is every one of you has someone who is a younger person within your sphere of influence. A lot of them are looking for jobs right now, especially in California. If they have the right stuff, send them into one of these fields, whether it's law or education or the media. How many of you here heard the story in the news about the highest state senator, Kevin DeLeon, who said half my family's here illegally? How many of you heard that story? Okay. Well, you can thank me for that being in the written media. Because originally, that story was recorded on John and Ken. John and Ken talked about it for a minute and a half. I got a Democrat that I worked with on the anti-forced vaccination clip sent me this minute and a half clip. So I called John and Ken's producer, and I got the original thing. I found it exactly where they got it from, and I sat there for hours and I transcribed it. Not one single media source had written anything about this 4 days after it happened.
Wow.
And this is shocking, because he didn't just say, half my family's here illegally. He said half my family's here illegally and they commit identity theft as a course of getting a job, and everybody does it. And by implication in his comments, which were made in a public hearing. Now think about this. There were Republicans on that committee who could have taken this tape and leaked it to the world. But none of them did. So it fell to me. Here I am sitting in my, office. I'm just a peckerwood up in the hills with too many guns, and I'm like, I can't believe, and I'm trying to type it so fast because I'm sure somebody else is going to get to it first. Sent it to my editor. He got it up on the website 3 minutes before the Super Bowl. And I'm thinking, nobody's going to hear this story. They're all watching a football game, right? Well, I sent it to Matt Drudge, and 3 minutes later it was on the Drudge Report. And Monday morning, it hit every news source in America. Now, unfortunately, I wish I could tell you the end of the story, because I did send it also to Steve Bannon, who is the one who hired me to write for Breitbart. I wish I could tell you that they came and arrested him for having knowledge of crimes being committed, and as an officer of the law who swore an oath to not only uphold the Constitution, but also the laws of the state of California. That is in the oath. But nothing happened to it. And yet, the important point of the story is none of this would have happened if somebody didn't understand and communicate this to somebody within the media. So, yeah, I know they like to call us the alt-right media. No, we're the alt-truth because we tell the truth. And we get the story right because we actually research it. And we make sure that we have the facts straight. And then we tell you what happened. What you do with that, that's on the culture. That's on the society. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know, how am I doing on time? Are you ready to kick me out?
No, you take a few more minutes.
Okay. I'm just going to leave you with a final story from 2006. In 2006, my brother-in-law, who was a Navy SEAL, decided to go into law. He's married to my sister. I have 14 brothers and sisters, but one of them is a liberal. She was a professor, assistant professor at Berkeley. She is now a professor at Boston College. And so she lived in the Bay Area. Anyway, he graduated from this very prestigious law school. And, we've all just seen graduations with, family, friends, grandkids, whatever. It's a festive time. It's a great time for the family. We launch a young person into the world. And we might do it with lays and pictures on Facebook, and we're sort of competitive with each other and want to have the best lay or whatever. That's sort of a big thing, at least in my family. But I was shocked. First of all, the speaker of this thing was Gavin Newsom in the height and at the beginning of the debate over traditional marriage. And he had just approved same-sex marriage in San Francisco, and that's what his topic was going to be at this graduation. So I grabbed my boys, walked up to the top and said, okay, you don't need to hear all this crap. But then I turned around and listened while they were playing football, and I watched. You see, what they do at their graduation, and I don't know if this is true at every one of these high-level leftist type schools, but I imagine it is. They don't just go out and get a job. They go out on scholarship. They go out on a mission. They have a Soros-type group that funds scholarships for the first 3 years of their working life. And they had a mission, and they talked about their mission there. And they weren't pussyfooting around the way Republicans do. They said, we have two missions for you. You are going to do one of two things. One, this group over here is going to erase the line between legal and illegal immigration. We are going to destroy and decimate the immigrant haters in this country. By immigrant hater, they mean anyone who opposes the illegal immigration. We are going to defend them in the courts. We are going to go into the culture. We are going to change the language. The word illegal alien, we are going to stamp out, even though it's a legal term that is in the federal code. And they've done that. Here we are, a decade later. They've done it. Second mission, we're going after those evil people known as Christians, especially white Christians. They didn't say we hate, they said they hate. They're the most intolerant people on the face of the earth. And we are going to target the traditional family, traditional marriage, and we are going to decimate that so that we have a level playing field and everybody's the same. And I didn't hear anything about all this gender stuff, but I guess they got done with traditional marriage so fast they had time for icing on the cake. And so, but it's nonstop. Their assault on the culture is unapologetic and it is nonstop. And so we have got to be raising up culture warriors with a 10, 15, 20-year plan to take back territory, just like you do in a war, and take back ground, and understand and control some of the debate.
We are in Torrance, California.
At least some of it. And so, that's not politics. That's culture. But it's the foundation of politics. And all politics is
Share it now.
how we're going to be ruled. Whether we're going to rule ourselves the way the founders intended, whether we're going to have a government that stands up and protects and safeguards our natural unalienable rights, or whether we're going to have a government that becomes the greatest threat to them until they finally cost you a family member, cost you a business, cost you property, or cost you your life.
Yep.
So that's really the question. All the answers, by the way, are in my book. And it's only $20. I'll be signing them in the back. I've got, I take credit cards, checks, cash, and look, here's the thing. If you don't want to read my book, or maybe you're not even into reading books, but you know a young person that might want to get into politics, this book is divided into 3 sections. The first part are miracles and inspirational stories, and I've been told it's a good read. The middle of the book is called Inside the Building. It's the day they let the wrong guy in, me. And the end of the book is about my journey pre-politics as a leader of the Minutemen and the insights I gained into those who control the levers of power. It might be something, if you're trying to inspire a young person into either politics or education or the media or law or one of these fields where conservatives often fear to tread, it might be something that sparks an interest. I'll be glad to sign the book out to them, but I want to just leave you with a simple encouragement. We didn't get to this moment in American politics when we elected a president who is taking a stand and standing for us alone. It happened because of the work that you did plowing the fields. Some plow, some plant, some water, and sometimes somebody else harvests. But that election of President Donald J. Trump is a credit to the work that you have done and continue to do. God bless you and Godspeed.
For a Q&A session with our members?
Sure.
Well, I have one question.
Well, I think I was pointing to the gentleman over there.
Did you make it to the Trump inauguration, Mayor?
No.
Well, I was fortunate enough. Did anybody else make it to the inauguration? Cool. After the inauguration, which, by the way, we were incapable of breathing. It was so packed. The Marine standing here, nudging my shoulder constantly, yells out, and CNN will report nearly 100 people showed up for this event. And he was right. We laughed at that, but we thought, well, that's what happened. We know that. I had planned we were going to go, my wife and I, we were going to go to one of the balls. I tried to get tickets to the Deplora ball, which I thought was just had to be the coolest place in town. The tickets started at $350, and then immediately began to be pressured upward and upward. I found out why. It was put on by Gays for Trump, the Deplora ball, and the Women for Trump, the Latinos for Trump, they worked out in just enormous ways.
Excuse me, is there a question in there
What I want to
somewhere?
know, what I want to tell you is mostly just to tell you, you're not alone in your thoughts. They're there, the resistance is there, they think it's in the Democrat side, it's not. They're there, Trump appeals to them.
Our Secretary Helen has a
I want to
question.
make sure your notes were accurate. You said a two-pronged approach. Was the first one to continue to fight
Continue electing patriots.
elect patriots, and the second take back our culture?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to,
Thank you.
Dr. Late, you have a question?
So how did Kashkari get to Minneapolis?
How did he get what?
How did he get to the Fed?
Well, he's obviously extremely connected. He put $3 million of his own money into the race. As a matter of fact, he said he was only going to put $2 million in. And then I remember the day when he put another $1 million in. And by the way, if you don't know who Kashkari is, he was my opponent. He was the Democrat who twice voted for Obama and was proud of it. And then he endorsed and voted for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. So he was a Republican for 1 minute while he was running for governor of California. And in between those bookends, he was a Democrat. When I saw Rupert Murdoch write him a $27,000 check, bells went off. Because, you know, I realized for a long time, because Rupert basically sent out a memo to everyone at Fox News, do not have Donnelly on ever. And you've heard about Equal Time. They were having him on almost every day. So he's there with all the financial gurus who essentially have the power to appoint somebody to the Federal Reserve. And he was very close to Geithner. He was the guy in charge of TARP. Excuse me.
The tax advisor.
Right. So the bottom line is, the day he announced for office, he had $1 million in his bank account, and almost all of it came from Wall Street. So he's very deeply connected there. I think a deal was made of some sort. Now, you can't legally pay a guy back who puts his own money in a race, but candidates, the way politics works, political parties and candidates can put unlimited funds into their own account and use it as they see fit. A political party can actually donate unlimited funds to a candidate, which is extraordinary. There's no other power like that. And it's clear that they just didn't want somebody who was known as a Minuteman, somebody who believed in the sovereignty of this country, somebody who would expose the corruption in there, and so they put him up as a patsy, and they took very good care of him. He's now got a job where he's making several $100,000 a year. Yeah.
Changing a little bit back to California, in your book, do you have anything to say about the sanctuary cities that are out there now, the sanctuary state that's being voted on by the Sacramento?
Absolutely.
And any federal government interaction from our Attorney General?
Let me, as far as sanctuary cities, I was elected in 2010, December 6th, and 6 minutes after I was elected, I introduced the Arizona law in the state of California.
Wow.
And the Arizona law holds cities accountable for being sanctuaries. Because it was a very, very deeply personal issue. When President Trump introduced Jamil Shaw, the father of the young black man killed in Los Angeles, he's a good personal friend of mine. I brought him to Sacramento to testify in that hearing. So in terms of the debate, President Trump did something that none of us could do. We all did it. Many of you did it, working to try to raise the voice of the person who was the victim of an illegal alien criminal. What I think we could do now in California today, it's very simple. And some of you may have heard me, I'm gonna lay out a commercial that I think the Republican Party ought to run. Very simple. You know how they always try to pick our candidates, right? They want the one who's going to be the least effective, the most boring, Jeb Bush. They want the weakie, the establishment hack, right? They want to pick them. Well, right now, we've got Gavin Newsom, who is a leftist, and he's charismatic, he's good looking, he's got a lot of hair, and he knows it, okay? So, but Gavin Newsom has a history. So I would run a simple commercial. just to damage him and maybe get someone like John Chang, who, by the way, is a Christian. He prayed with me and met with me when I ran for governor. He is much more conservative on almost every issue. Okay, so the commercial we would run, you've all seen the ASPCA commercials where the dogs are in cages, and, you know, the music is going, and you feel yourself reaching for your wallet. You're almost about to give money, you know, and then you maybe recover your senses and remember what you were told about the real truth behind a lot of this stuff. But anyway, we run a commercial like that. Starts out with that music. But instead of dogs in cages, you see Kate Steinle. Gorgeous, 32-year-old woman who was cut down in the prime of her life by sanctuary city policies, and you have the headline. But it's family photos you see.
And a picture of Ruben Morphine.
And no,
Executed.
no, this is my commercial. It's
yeah.
only going to be.
Well, we should have that one too.
It's only going to be Kate Steinle, because Kate Steinle personifies inside and out. There's a beauty that comes through in the photographs. There's not going to be a lot of words in this commercial. So once that's done, it just says on the screen, what was her crime? Wrong place, wrong time. What was her hobby? Holding fundraisers for disabled kids, and you show a picture of her doing that. Mm-hmm. And then the next scene, you see similar photos of Anthony, 48 years old, and his sons Michael and Matthew, 16 and 20, who were also cut down by sanctuary city policy by an illegal alien gangbanger who got a gun, and there's a headline. So you see the headline, you see that, and it says, what was their crime? Wrong place, wrong time. What was their hobby? And all you do is show a picture of the father and his two sons with a baseball bat and their baseball caps on, because that's where they were murdered, at the baseball field. And then it fades to black. And it says, where's the wrong place at the wrong time to be in America? Anywhere Gavin Newsom's in charge. Because his sanctuary city policies got them killed. And then it says, vote Republican, or vote for, you fill in the blank. We don't really have the candidate, but somebody who has the guts and the quote-unquote testicular fortitude to actually take a stand. See, if we did something like that, if they took their $19 million they banked last year from all of us donors and ran something like that and destroyed the Hillary of California, Gavin Newsom, it would send them into disarray. But they won't, because then they wouldn't be invited to the parties. Yes?
I know you talk about bringing back the culture, but moving into counties that are of a particular culture, and then you have an initiative like Joseph Turner's, there's got to be some backlash. How do you fight that?
What do you mean backlash?
The backlash of a majority Hispanic, since we're next to the border, and blocking illegal immigrants from enrolling in public schools. They're going to say, no, not in our community. You're going to let them in. How do you fight that? I mean, they're primarily of the ilk to say, oh, no, they're our children. We don't care if they're documented or not. Let them in.
Well, they actually, you're misstating it. They actually prefer people who are legally present.
No.
Matter of fact, in Fresno, the board, a friend of mine's on the board there, and I've asked them to give me the document. They've said we're prouder of the illegal aliens, they call them undocumented students, that we've enrolled and given your money to than any other students.
Well, that's what I mean. But in those smaller communities where, say, the Joseph Turner initiative spreads, how would you counter that as a conservative angle to say, yes, you should block?
Well, Proposition 187 kept all benefits, including K through 12 school.
Yep.
But see, it's just like Obamacare. As soon as you open the door and give a benefit, Ronald Reagan said this in 1961, as soon as you give people something, when you take it back, you're considered a thief.
Yeah.
Bottom line. So we are so far down the pale, but it's still, the fight for resources is you splinter the Democrat Party because it's the white elite liberals who hate the DREAM Act. They may be Democrats. Believe me, I've had television producers pull me aside and say, we're with you on this fight. We'll give you all the coverage you could possibly have because you are in the mainstream on this, yes. And it's fascinating. They won't say it publicly, but you give them a chance to vote. So yeah, and so when I was in the Assembly, I did something very simple. I put forth a bill, I wrote a bill that would repeal all monies for illegal aliens in college, period. Whether it was the subsidy for in-state tuition or the flat-out free college, every penny. And then we take the exact dollar amount and we set it aside for those who have served in the military, are active and current serving, and their families and their children who are transferred to California through no fault of their own, because that's their own language. And that was a bill they hated so much they killed it in the very first committee, because they couldn't bear to hear that. But there's a lot of people that when they're presented a choice like that, and you take any group, but basically people want to have their own interests put first, especially if they've paid in for years and years and generations, and they're seeing somebody else benefit from it.
Megan, here's been waiting.
Yeah, hi. We were talking about the culture war. Do you think Twitter's a good vehicle for fighting the culture war? Because I'm on there and I'm always saying things to Ted Lieu and Maxine Waters. And
Sure.
I don't have that many followers. I've got 8 or 9,000 followers.
It's really, if you watch how Andrew Breitbart used to do it, he would get under their skin, he would get his facts together, he would challenge them, he would very specifically attack them. Not call them names, attack them on an issue or call them out on an issue. I think it's good for that. It's not good for a whole lot more. It's great for what President Trump is doing, but he built his own brand and his own celebrity and his own notoriety long before. When I put stuff out on Twitter right now, because I'm not in elected office, I have 7,000 followers. Really, not much happens with it. So there has to be sort of a je ne sais quoi. If you are out there in the streets, let's say you're like Arthur, you're out at one of those rallies in the middle of things and you're tweeting something, you're going to get a lot more attention right now than if you're just an average Twitter user. So I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on it. I would think it would be much more effective to take your phone and your camera and go Facebook Live at one of those meetings and record, especially when they're holding a meeting for people in the country illegally to teach them how to not get deported on our tax dollars. Because they're basically teaching them how to flout the law.
Yeah.
And that has a resonance and a connection because people understand it's wrong. On every level it's wrong. Even if you're a Democrat, you're sympathetic to the plight of people who come here illegally. And all of us as human beings are sympathetic to the plight of individuals. But at the same time, we know about precedent. We know about the rule of law and what's really truly at stake.
We have time for one more question, please.
Yes.
Maybe I missed this, I came in a little bit late, but I'm really sick of the cannibalism of the Republican Party and the not supporting whoever the nominee is. And I'm ready I've donated money to campaigns and I've about had it. So this is my last chance, the Republican Party, this is my last chance, but who are the people with the money? Who are these big money people? And when do they meet? And because I'd like to attend one of those meetings and, let them know where we stand. I think as a small business owner, my abilities are limited, and I'm also just like I'm a target if I speak out. My business has been targeted. I've spoken out against Dianne Feinstein, and my business was audited after many, many years of excellent everything. And so I'd like to know who these. It's hard for the small everyday person to do anything, but I'm willing to get behind the Republican Party, but they really need to get their act together. And they seem to choose, like you said, these Jeb Bush candidates. It's like, who is picking these people? Or who's the McCain? I just want to grab him and strangle him every time I see him. He's
Well,
such a
you're
turncoat.
dead on. They want to choose. And they want the least offensive country club member.
Why? I don't get it.
Because then they'll get invited to all the fun parties.
Oh, man.
And I did a long segment on Charles Munger Jr., who bought the entire Republican Party. He thinks he owns it.
Where is he?
He
Where
acts
is
like he owns it. He is, you've heard Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
So he is Warren Buffett's business partner, who's named Charlie Munger. It's his son. And his daddy gave him billions of dollars. And so he decided that his goal was going to be to destroy the Republican Party and turn it into an absolutely non-existent entity that cannot fight and can never win. And he's been very successful. We are now at the lowest registration the Republican Party has ever been in the lifetime of the Republican Party, number one. And number two, we lose. And it's their plan to lose. The plan is not to win. And then even if they did win by accident, their plan is not to actually send somebody there who would pick an effective fight. And so it wouldn't even matter if they won, and you've seen that. We've had representatives who are in office, and we won, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
So,
Nothing's changed.
to your
Yes.
point, the Republican Party is also, it is not just the elites, it's you, it's me. I ran for office with no money, no experience. This is all chronicled in my book. And I won by a single vote per precinct. When I went to Sacramento, the headlines were full. I didn't expect this. I'm just an ordinary guy, small business owner like you and everything else, who had spoken out against illegal immigration as a Minuteman. And they attacked me and called me racist and vilified me statewide. And then I discovered something amazing. Same thing that Ronald Reagan discovered and President Trump discovered. I started getting phone calls, support, email, checks. I got a $500 check out of San Francisco from a union guy who loved the fact that I was picking a fight. So we have to go create our own entity. I think we should just replace the entire Republican Party with an app. And one that doesn't offend you and attack you and undermine you the way that the Republican Party has done. I won the Central Committee in Los Angeles County by 72%. And they set up these impossible rules so that populist candidates like myself would not be able to win. I won. So you know what they did that year? They didn't bother to communicate with the voters who they had endorsed.
Wow.
So not only did I suffer and my campaign suffer, but the campaigns of every single down ticket individual who had taken their time, treasure, and money to run as a Republican got screwed over because they control the rules and they do it with this money. So it's time that we break that paradigm and smash the failed, dysfunctional party that no longer serves us and remake it in the image of patriots like Ronald Reagan and like President Trump, who are being effective at actually getting things done. Anyway, God bless you and Godspeed.
Let's take a 10-minute break. Tim is going to be in the back with his book. He'll also answer any other